All right, folks, let's give folks a little bit of time to hop on and we will get started. Thank you for joining us. All right, Governor Terry McAuliffe.
Well, thank you all for joining us. Here we are another week, another big policy rollout about how we want to make Virginia number one. I have continuously said we need Virginia to lead America. We need to build that post-COVID economy. And for me, it always comes down to education. Those who are building the best education system, the best workforce, are those that are going to be able to recruit the jobs of the 21st century. So a big, huge part of this. And I want to thank all the folks who are with me today. We've got Sal McKinley up there on the right, who is a student. He actually was on one with us before. We have my former Secretary of Technology, Karen Jackson, who's with us. We have a great entrepreneur, Andrew Kuo, who I've actually put on my education board. He has been a great leader here in Virginia on education. And then the greatest principal in Virginia, we've got Dustin Wright here, who deals with these issues every single day. And we've rolled out a new STEM H, obviously science, technology, engineering, math, and healthcare, and computer sciences. We've rolled out a big, bold plan today of how we rebuild the Virginia economy and doing it through education. And we talk about STEM H all the time. We need to do a better job. We're one of the 5 states in America with the most STEM H jobs available, but we need to be the #1 state for credentialing, apprenticeships, education for STEM H, so that those companies will continue to come. The companies that we have here today will stay, and we really need a transformation in our education system. And that's what I'm talking about today. And we need to deal with the questions of inequities as it relates to the STEM H. You think of how few students are taking the STEM H courses, when 80% of these jobs, high paying, high demand jobs of the future, 80% are going to require some background, some knowledge, some training in STEM H and computer science. So we here in Virginia either change the way we do it, or we're not going to be able to bring those big jobs in the future. So I'm talking about making sure our teachers, every one of our new teachers, is taught and is educated so that they can teach STEM H, computer science. Everybody has to have some of these skills. I talk about building inclusive so that all parts of the Commonwealth, so that students early on are interested. And this is something that they want to have an interest in, because if they do and they go and study it, we're going to be able to move them right into a high paying job. And that's really what this is all about today, and changing the way we actually do our education system here. And I want to thank everybody for being with us today. I talk a lot about how we at the state can't do it alone. It has to be done with the private sector. We did a lot of this, as Karen knows, back in my 4 years as governor. I called for 50,000 STEM H credentials. We easily hit that goal. We exceeded that. We started cyber camps. We did boot camps for teachers on cyber. We were the #1 state for cyber. So we really changed how we did business. But now we got to really take it to the next level. And a big part of that was bringing the private sector in to help us to do that. So Andrew, let me start out with you with the first question, if I could. You know all about this. You know about education. You know about the need. I talk a lot how we make this a public-private partnership. How do we do that here in Virginia? How do we become the model for the other 50 states to really build an experience here in high school for our students, so that they really understand through internships and so forth what their future holds for them?
Yeah. First of all, Governor, thank you very much. I always loved your energy around this topic, and it's exciting to read your plan that actually has some very strong substantive solutions to a very, very big growing need here, not just in Virginia, but across our overall country. To answer your question, yes, 80% of our jobs across the US are STEM related, but even in Virginia, we have, in this COVID world, we have jobs that are available today. I just checked last night on one of the Indeed.com websites. We have over 3,000 jobs in cyber right now open.
Yeah.
Over 10,000 in cloud. We have a lot of data center folks in this particular Commonwealth, and there's a lot of jobs that creates across the entire Commonwealth here. To answer your question, private
It's
sector,
fair to say, Andrew, if
Yeah.
we don't fill those jobs, those businesses will go where they can fill them. to another
absolutely.
state.
That's one of the major indicators, Terry, as you know, when you're attracting companies to this particular state, it's education. They talk about a lot of things, but it's really education for many reasons. And from that, private sector wants to get involved. Even my 25 years working for some of the largest tech companies in the world, they want to get involved. And you mentioned something that's so important about credentialing. I have hired thousands of people across my tenure as a manager and as an executive. I've never asked about just a GPA and a particular test score. It's always about a skill. And that is still more relevant today, and that is not going to stop. And so these high-paying jobs, by the way, they're very high-paying jobs. And I would bring in the private sector, as you indicate in your plan, to bring in these micro-credentials. Ask them what are their skills in order to work at that particular hospital or healthcare organization or that high-tech company. And as you start to bridge that and have them involved in this public-private, I call it infusion, you got to infuse them together. I think you're starting to see a strong flywheel of the demand and hopefully the supply that you're going to create to really have a very strong ecosystem and an economy in an exciting way for young folks like Solomon to get some really good opportunities across the way.
And you make a valid point. I used to say this when I'd meet with superintendents and the college presidents and all that. One of my, I've been involved in dozens of companies. One company I owned, I was chairman of, was a big home building company. I used to build about 1,000 homes a year. Now, there's a lot of pieces that go into building a home, and a lot of things could go wrong. And I used to say to our folks, I want you to hire people who have street smarts. If something goes wrong in the construction of that home, I really don't care what that person got on their SAT.
Right.
I really don't care what they got on an SOL. It really doesn't matter to me. Do they have what I call street smarts? Can they figure the problem out and come up with a solution? And that's why, as you know, we added cognitive thought process, critical reasoning, first state in America when I was governor to do that. We begin teaching cybersecurity concepts beginning kindergarten here in Virginia. So we've started on that path, but Andy, you're exactly right. Forget all the tests, and that's why we got rid of 5 SOLs. There were just way too many tests. I want to hire people like Solomon who want to come into this with, all right, let's get it. Here's a problem. How do I fix it? And that really matters, Solomon. I want you to get good grades. I'm not saying that, but I really want us to teach you in our education system so you go out and really handle any problem that's going to be thrown at you, and a lot will be thrown at you. So, Solomon, you and I talked before. You are very much interested in the STEM H. We've talked about this. So for all the students out there, tell me, how did you get interested? And more importantly, what I'd like to know, and I'm sure our principal would like to know, how do we get more students interested? I'm talking 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, starting early. How do we do that? You're interested. How do we get more people interested?
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me here again today. I'm always glad to be here. Thank you. And I always got interested in technology when I was really younger because I grew up around a lot of technology. Technology was always around me. And I was always curious, like how technology worked and how people could program something to do a certain thing or perform a certain function. And for getting people interested in school, I feel like it's good to always start early. And I feel like bringing in businesses and job owners or business owners that can provide internships and get students interested as early as possible. I feel like that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. And, I remember, I wrote the bid for Amazon, my team, when we were in office. And a big part of that with Amazon that they found very attractive is that we do a partnership with Amazon. I also want to give a great shout out to Virginia Tech. I offered every college and university the ability to become part of our bid that we submitted. And Virginia Tech was the one that stepped up to the plate with a big $1 billion innovation center. And a big part of that is this whole internshipping. And I know that's what we're trying to do up in with the new Amazon Center that we have going. But what do you like to hear in education, Solomon, that would get more people excited? High pay, high demand. What is it that young people are looking at? What do they want to get out of their education system and where they want it to go?
Honestly, both. And I feel like it's very important, like, as you said, to have classes that teach street smarts and how to problem solve, and just being able to face any problem that students would face on a job. Like, I feel like students, they need to learn how to critically think and how to solve problems. Is like, I think that should be more focused on in school rather than SAT testing, SOL testing.
Yeah. So I don't want to put the principal in here, but Solomon, last question. Do you think today your education is doing what you need to do to teach the cognitive thought process, critical reasoning concepts? And is it being done early enough?
Honestly, I don't feel like it's done being early enough. I feel like we're getting to a good start, but I feel like we can go further.
Yeah. All right. So now we get our principal, who, Dustin, you have to deal with this every single day. And to me, the biggest, most glaring issue that steps out when we think about teaching the STEM are really the inequities that we have, and that students of color, not the same interest. What are we doing wrong? And why is it? We know, as Andrew mentioned, 80% of the new jobs. So we know these are going to be the high demand. We know these are going to be the high paying jobs. How do we do a better job to get the students of color early interested so that we can give them a pathway of success?
Yeah, thank you, Governor, and thank you again for all your advocacy on behalf of educators throughout the Commonwealth. I think you're asking a really great question and a critical one at this time. I think keeping equity at the center of all that we do in education is one of the most important things. And as we use this lens to think about our current approach and what we're doing right now, how we're allocating resources, that's important. But also as we look to the future, thinking about equity at the center and really taking a hard look at where there are barriers for access and opportunity. When I think about some of the things you're talking about how to increase our students of color and our young women, their participation in STEM, H, and CS, there's a couple things that come to mind. I think the first one is in continuing to ensure that our schools are full of great teachers, and that those teachers reflect the diversity of the students that they teach. We want to have our students be able to see themselves in their teachers. We want them to be able to see role models in their teachers, and having a diverse workforce is critical to that, but also ensuring that that our teachers come from their preparation programs with some of these background and core competencies around STEM, H, and CS.
Let me ask you, I don't mean to interrupt you, but do you think we are doing that today for our teachers?
I don't think that there's some of the explicit focus on helping a teacher in any subject. And I think a lot about what we're all talking about is we need to infuse the ability to be around digital literacy and those type of things in all of our curriculum areas. So we want, there's ways, not just in a CS class, but in other curriculum areas where we can talk about some of these important subjects, and having some explicit approaches to it in the preparation program, I think, is really important. You can also think about the type of professional development our teachers have access to once they get in the role. And then I think one of the biggest areas of growth moving forward is thinking about how we're sharing ideas across the Commonwealth, and what technology do we have available to us to make that more possible. Can a teacher in Bristol, Virginia talk to a teacher in Norfolk and learn what they're doing really well? And I think those are some areas where we can grow. I think the other thing that's going to help with some the diversity that we're talking about today is, and you've touched on it a little bit, is we got to start early, and we have to encourage not only this curriculum early with our students, but just helping all of our students understand that they all have the opportunity to access rigorous curriculum. I think about some of the classes that go alongside STEM and CS, math and science, some of those advanced math classes. We want our students to know that they can be a part of those and that they can be successful in them, and we can help them with that in the schools. So that starting early with the explicit focus on STEM is really important, but just the idea of we have the confidence and the faith in you to be successful in helping our students that might not traditionally have access to some of this higher levels of rigor, helping them get in those classes.
And I thought a very important thing you made was that every teacher has to have some level of some digital literacy, no matter what they're teaching. And, when we come up with these policy ideas, we reach out to business and folks, and we have a good, healthy debate. I always like to push the envelope. That's just who I am. And so when I propose that we need to say that every teacher, you can't say that, you'll get, No. All I'm saying is we need to make sure, if we can, and to make sure we have a system set up so that every teacher has some digital literacy, and we will help them get that. But for every new teacher coming in, that has to be part of the core curriculum for them to become teachers here in the Commonwealth. So I with you, Dustin, 100% on that. The other thing we need to touch on, which I have found is a real problem for us, is now we know the broadband access is a huge problem in many parts of the Commonwealth, and socioeconomic issues and the rural. I've called for every student to have access to broadband. It's about 75 million a year. I call for that. But the other, if you could touch on a little bit, Dustin, is just the devices, the different types of the tablets or other things. There is such a lack. And I do think, and Andrew, I know you agree with me, this is a real opportunity for the private sector to be involved to help us do what we need to do. But Dustin, do you see a lot of that it's really across the Commonwealth? It's not a sense of equity in regards to just digital devices that they have access to.
Yeah, and I think the COVID pandemic that we've gone through in the last year has put a spotlight on some of those inequities in terms of access to devices. I know a lot of divisions have put a lot of resources into ensuring that they're getting a device in every student's hand, but again, it's still an area where again, across the Commonwealth, we can continue to think about keeping equity at the center. And then some of the things that you talked about too, just the beyond, where I've seen with students in our own school, that once we get them to the device, we need to make sure that they have access at home to the broadband, the internet that they need. And so that's definitely something that there's a great start with that. A lot of places have put the resources up front. But we want to continue that, and we want to continue to think about making sure that the devices we have are the right ones for the right students. A netbook might not be the right fit for some of our youngest learners, or I think about students with special needs or our English learners, making sure that we match the technology that we provide them with their needs is another important thing to consider.
Yeah. Andrew, anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, no, Governor, I think what Principal Wright said was definitely spot on. And I'd say another area I think you might even articulate in your plan is where when COVID happened, we had every one of the school districts try to find and purchase their own, all on their own. There could have been probably a better way to consolidate and look at it holistically. And private sector would love to see a single way to look at how to cover all the needs across everyone. So all the folks in Fairfax, they would benefit from a lot of the research and technologies, but that we'll call it purchasing power, if you will, could have been also benefiting Wise County or Bath County and all across the board. Yep. And that type of mechanism, I think, is right where private sector would love to find ways, as Principal Wright says, find the right devices, broadband connectivity, and even other technologies that we can even install to help even educators on the front line to really understand what student learning and engagement is happening, because it's a very different modality of teaching in a classroom versus online. And we are seeing some learning losses happen. And I believe private sector can innovate the use of information and all that stuff to really understand how do we make sure we don't lose a lot of students during this pandemic, because as they start to be more disconnected, sometimes technology can be an edge in order to help an educator be empowered. And I think there's another area and opportunity for private sector to come in and help as well.
Yeah. Madam Secretary, you and I have spent years talking about this issue, and we did it. I'm very proud, made us the #1 state in America for cyber data analytics, unmanned systems. We always talked about the challenge that we had, because by the time we finished office, we had 40,000 plus open cyber jobs. Starting pay, Solomon, was $88,000, Solomon. And we had all these open jobs. So, we had to really retool our education system and all that. But one thing, Karen, you and I talked about, was education, student-centered, inquiry-based education system, but the value of the internship, so that early on we could expose, and we talked a lot about technology, we talked about our space program, but getting these young students these internships in the industry. And why don't you talk, and we did a lot to foster this, what your thoughts are on that, of helping get young folks early on interested in our STEM H fields.
Yeah, Governor, it's such a pleasure to be back, and this is a bold plan. I'm completely behind what you have in there. I see so many roots in the work that we started actually 8 years ago now.
That's right.
I think the thing to remember about this is really the students that are going through their education right now are actually preparing for jobs that may not even exist because technology is moving so quickly.
Yeah.
And so the idea that we have the ability, and I was a little bit taken back, Solomon, I think you were being a little bit shy with us. I didn't hear you say that it should be fun to learn about these careers. I think some of the most impactful things that we did, Governor, brought these careers that seem so untouchable and out of reach. We did a day in the life of cyber professionals where kids could actually get in and look and see what it meant to be a cyber pro. NCIS and some of the TV shows helped us out a little bit because kids saw it at home on TV. But the idea that kids can get their hands on something, try it, take it in their own hands, break it if they have to, and learn that, you know, there's no risk. Somebody can fix it. And you talked about problem solving. We have to make sure that these kids are digital natives now. What are we doing to take that fearlessness out that's nascent in who they are? We put them into these school systems, and then suddenly technology becomes too hard. It becomes unattainable. There's something broken in that system. Much of what we did, we drove from outside of the education system itself. We pushed them. You pushed them. You were bold in the activities that you undertook. The Virginia Cyber Range, that was a huge win. And it goes to a little bit about what Dr. Wright was talking about, because it allows all the students across the entire
But
Commonwealth
Karen, you and I know the cyber range. A lot of these folks
Yeah.
who are watching may not have any idea what we did in that regard, but I do agree. I think you ought to explain that a little bit.
Sure, happy to do that. One of the things that came out of your cyber commission was the need for kids to have a place where they could practice their cyber skills so they could be more industry ready when they went into college or work or wherever. So you created and got budget funding of, I think it was $2 million to stand up with the help of Virginia Tech and the other centers of academic excellence in cyber, a playground essentially. And it is a safe network where from any high school, middle school in the Commonwealth, teachers and students can get online. They can practice their cyber skills. There's curriculum that is available on how to teach cyber. So a little bit to Dr. Wright's point about sharing information across boundaries. And it's actually now become a nationally federated model. There's a national cyber range that actually grew out of this cyber range, but it was all about providing a safe, I'm going to say an easy button, quite frankly, Governor, for teachers and for students so that they could get their hands dirty in cyber, play with it, and it didn't run the risk of breaking the school's other IT network, which was always a big concern. But this hands-on piece is imperative. You made me the first female Secretary of Technology. That was a bold move. So I think that made me a little bit more dogged about and determined to make sure that women and young girls saw that there was an opportunity for them in these fields. And it's not always about a 2 and 4 year degree as what we've heard. You and I worked on credentialing. We worked with SANS Institute to make sure that credentialing is valued. And I think we have to do a little bit of work with parents as well. You know, it doesn't have to be a 2 or a 4 year degree for your child to be very successful and have a very successful career.
And one thing I should say to the principal, one thing I'm proposing, we're looking at a new degree type program, a 5-year program, 4 years of high school, and then 1 year after that. We can do that 5-year program. We can train you. We can move you right into a high paying job here in Virginia. Karen's right. We got to get off of this whole model. It was built for the Industrial Revolution. That is not the economy, the gig economy that we're dealing with today. I'm sorry, Karen. You get me excited when you get home.
Oh. And I'm glad you're excited because and it shows in the plan, which is great. But I think that's the thing. And as we talk about HQ2 and the urban areas, we have to remember that, you know, like Solomon, there's a lot of great talent that are in our rural areas, and they do need to be able to see mentors and see people that go to work in jobs that are technology oriented, so that they understand that there's an opportunity there. And so I think your plan does a great job of involving the private sector. I was happy to, help with Nikki and as it came together, because I do think it strikes that blend between industry and education, and industry and government. Because as I said, when I started this conversation, we're not training kids for the technology of today. If we're doing that, then we're already training them on something that'll be an antique, 6, 8, 12 months from now. We've got to teach them how to be bold, to use one of your phrases, and to really see it as fun. They're going to have to work hard. They're going to have to be competitive to get these jobs, but learning technology should not be viewed as a drudgery. It's a part of our everyday lives. We wouldn't be doing this session this way if it weren't. And so we need to make sure that we provide those opportunities and really kind of an ecosystem so that they're learning, they're enjoying, they're seeing mentors, and then they have a trajectory straight into a good career at the end.
That's right. And let's be honest, it's not like, Solomon, I'm sure like you're like my 5 children. All day they have this device. So, the young folks of today, they are already digitally connected every second of the day. I'd like to take these phones away from my kids every once in a while. It's like, oh my goodness. But we're already there because, they're already connected. They're already on the internet every single day doing what they need to do. We just need to add that piece. And I think, as Karen said, doing these internships, getting people younger. And the real thing is, dealing with our teachers. That's why we came up with this Lucy Sims scholarship. If you'll go and our high demand area of STEM H, and you get trained in that, and then you agree to be a teacher here in Virginia for 5 years, we'll pay your college tuition. We'll pay your board, room and board and tuition. We'll pay for that if you're willing to do that. And we're the first state to do something like that. But, my point is, if we are going to make Virginia #1, and I keep saying with this COVID crisis, the state that's going to build it is going to be the biggest recipient. We cannot tinker around the edges. Our education system was built for the industrial level. It was built in the past. The state that's going to lead on this, and to me, and Principal, you mentioned this, my priority on education, I have the record of the most jobs ever created, big deficit, big surplus, all 1,100 new companies, all that stuff we did. Why? It was education. Because I could convince an employer somewhere in the globe, or those 35 trade missions around the world that I went on, you come to Virginia, I'm going to give you a workforce for 20 or 30 years. And before they're going to spend millions, they can come to America, they can go to 50 states. Where am I going to go? They're going to go. And that's why, I recruited Nestle Corporation to move out of Los Angeles. Thousands of huge high-paying jobs moved here to Northern Virginia. And I remember my final dinner with the CEO, and we sat down. I brought a beautiful case of Virginia wine. I was going to drink that California stuff. And we sat and had a great celebration dinner. I said to him at the end of dinner, okay, Virginia's not a big incentive state. I mean, if Texas wants a deal, why Virginia? He said, Governor, it's your education system. My employees don't think they can give their children the K-12 education out here they think they can get in Virginia. So when people say to me all the time, well, how are you going to afford all this? First of all, we can't afford not to do it. But any of these investments in education, we will build a surplus reserve for decades to come, because we will bring those jobs of the 21st century here to Virginia and hire our people. And that's what really gets me, we can do this. No more tinkering around the edges. Big, bold action. Sleep when you're dead is my motto. So anyone else want to add anything before we finish up? I'm just warming up here. So anyone wants to add anything else?
Oh, thank you very much, Governor. We look for you to take the helm and get us there quickly.
No, you ain't seen nothing yet, Andrew.
Love it.
And people better be ready. All over this government, we are going to shake it to its foundations to build the best state. #1. I don't get out of bed to be number 10 or 20 or 30. Right, Karen? I used to tell my cabinet that every Monday morning.
Yes, you did, sir.
Yes, we did. All right. Well, listen, let me thank all of you. Andrew, thank you. I want to thank our great principal and really appreciate, in education. You and I could spend, Dustin, all day talking education. I've already talked about the teacher pay. We're 50th out of 50 states on average teacher pay. That is a disgrace for a state that's the 10th wealthiest in America. Really? So we got a lot of work to do in the education system. And I want to thank you, Solomon. This is your second one. I mean, you are the driver of all of this. I want to thank you. Keep it up. I'm counting on you. And I'm thinking, Solomon, next 10 years, boom, you have a gigantic company, thousands of employees throughout the Commonwealth of Virginia. And that's our goal for you, man. That's what I'm counting on for you. And obviously, Karen, thank you for your great leadership and being with us here today. And folks, let's go. Game on.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.